Yeah! What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Off the Bench. I'm Brandon Carney alongside Pat Gustafson. And Pat, this is actually my first podcast episode on this ridiculous ultra-wide monitor that I got, so I can actually see everything all at once now, and it's wonderful.
That does sound really nice. I'm tiny Mac laptop boy, so we've got several tabs going on here.
I finally do not need to change tabs, really, ever, I don't think, but this is going to be maybe the most efficient pod I've ever done, so pretty excited about that.
So what made you go with the wide one instead of, like, two?
This was the nicest and had the best specs I could find of, like, any monitor kind of in that genre. Like, if there was a 2-wide that had similar, like, I use it to game as well, so if it had, like, similar response time and similar, resolution, I didn't need to go 3-wide, but it was kind of just available, and I was just kind of like,
I mean, why not?
Ball. This is a tax write-off for your boy, so we said send it, why not? But, Pat, this was a busy week in the NFL, which is always nice this time of year for the pod. We have... in the show today, we've got NFL Combine reactions, we've got franchise tags, and we are inching ever so closer to NFL free agency to the point where we are starting to see some of these dominoes fall that we've talked about over the last few weeks. Yeah. But probably most importantly, Pat, today was the franchise tag deadline, which we will get into. One more thing we wanted to mention off the top is RIP to a legend, Chris Mortensen, longtime ESPN NFL reporter, a guy who I think anybody our age or older, and even, some people younger, I guess really anybody, Pat, probably grew up on this guy to some extent.
It's so crazy because, like, kids these days, for younger people, Adam Schefter is like the NFL insider, but for us, it was Chris Mortensen and it was John Clayton too, to a lesser extent, and they're both gone. And that, it's just, everyone's getting older, and obviously a lot of people still like to rag on Chris Mortensen for the 11 out of 12 deflated footballs report for Deflategate, which again, obviously, I think people like to think that reporters make stuff up. Like, they just get bad sources. He just got fucked by a source, but you just see all the really, really positive things people said about him. Like, yeah, I don't know. It just took me back to being a kid, and on SportsCenter, NFL Live, the Mort report would come on and just,
oh
God, like we're getting old, man. Shit's sad.
It sucks, man. We're gonna miss the guy for sure, but his contributions to ESPN overall will definitely not be forgotten. But Pat, we've got
Mickey
plenty
Mouse
of business.
Salute to you.
Absolutely, we got plenty of business to take care of. So let's get into our news for the day.
Good evening. I'm Ron Burgundy, and this is what's happening in your world tonight.
So, off the top, a Benchwarmer brand favorite and a podcast favorite, Russell Wilson. His fate is finally officially known. The Broncos are moving on from Mr. Unlimited. Now, he won't officially be a free agent until free agency opens on March 13th, but he is free to talk with other teams now with this news being released. Pat, I put together a little, career highlights / eulogy. So we'll run through a few things for Russ here, if you don't mind. Feel free to interject at any point, but this is just the timeline of Russ in Denver. All right, I just wanted to give the people a little recap. So, I almost forgot. I have music to accompany this. Excuse me.
God
all right,
damn it.
We've got the eulogy music going. So, on March 16th, 2022, the Broncos traded for Russell Wilson to make up for missing out on Aaron Rodgers, which was the only reason they hired Nathaniel Hackett. Let me turn this down. I suspect this might be a little too loud. I can't tell how loud this is going to come across in the final product. Okay, a few months later, September 1st, 2022, Russ signs a 5-year, $245 million contract extension with the Broncos. What could go wrong? On September 12th, 2022, Russ makes his debut at Seattle, his former team, losing 17-16, partially thanks to that infamous 64-yard field goal attempt by Nathaniel Hackett. But here's the real headline, Pat, as it pertains to Russ. He threw for 340 yards in that game. His only 300-yard passing game in year one with the Broncos. Meanwhile, crazy. Russ also became a meme in more ways than one. You had Broncos Country Let's Ride, the Danger Witch collab with Subway, the reports of him having his own personal office away from his teammates. Basically, he was in the spotlight more than ever while having the worst season of his career by far. Then we jump into year 2 with Sean Payton, who basically told him to shut the fuck up. You're not a politician. Stop kissing babies and doing all this other unnecessary shit and focus on football. Seemed to help a little bit. They got the most juice possible out of Russ. Statistically, he was much better than he was last year, but it still wasn't enough. And now Russ is getting cut. The Broncos are about to eat $85 million in dead money, more than the last 2 dead money contracts combined. And oh, by the way, the trade for Russ may not have netted the Seahawks a ton of game-breaking talent. We talked about this last week, but they did get draft picks that turned into starting tackle Charles Cross, starting linebacker Boye Mafe, and one actual game-breaking talent that I'm sure the Broncos would love to have right now. Imagine him alongside Pat Surtain, Devon Witherspoon. Broncos country, goodbye. It's the end of Russ in Denver. So, I just wanted to give a little recap of what exactly Russ's tenure in Denver was. Pat, I think the funniest part of the entire thing is that contract extension didn't even kick in. This was just him playing out the rest of the Seattle deal. They didn't need to sign him to that.
And he was content to kind of just play out the Seattle deal, but Denver was the one who was kind of like, hey, let's work out an extension and add. It's like, let's get.
I wish. It's a Prime bottle, folks. Sorry, just in case anyone listening.
Oh, that's right. I forget that normal people and stuff listen on Spotify. But I just think that while it was the right decision he kind of got done dirty a little bit. I think just a little bit, because he was never going to succeed either under Nathaniel Hackett, God forbid, or Sean Payton, because basically it was almost like a known thing around the NFL, apparently, that Sean did not want Russell Wilson, and that Russell Wilson was going to have to blow him away to stay there. And he wasn't that bad. I mean, you look at the numbers. The numbers are not eye-poppingly different than year 1. Obviously, less interceptions, more touchdowns, a slightly better completion percentage. But for him to basically just be the scapegoat of this organization making bad decision after bad decision, it seems just a little like I don't think he was quite as bad. Year 1 was awful. Year 1 was laughable. But I don't think his whole tenure there was truly that bad. I think it's more so just going to be a disaster in the sense of now how far it's going to set them back in the future. How it possibly already set them back in terms of like Devon Witherspoon or Noah Fant or Shelby Harris, whoever. But the funniest thing was his actually a really, humble, thank you to Denver, where he thanked everyone except ownership and Sean Payton.
I didn't see that.
He was literally thanking the cafeteria workers by name. Mm-hmm. Like a very nice, heartfelt tribute, and not a single mention thanking everyone else. Which, honestly, if I was Russ too, I'd be like, a big fuck you. I'm going to take my fucking $85 million in peace.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame him. I think you make a good point about Sean Payton just being the one that clearly didn't want Russ. Because I think if you had any other head coach, or let's say Nathaniel Hackett wasn't a complete fucking disaster and he was still here, I think if we saw this kind of improvement from year 1 to year 2 with Russ, he would have at least been worth keeping around with this contract. Maybe you bench him and you draft a guy this year. We all expect the Broncos to draft a guy now anyway. I think Russ is a decent enough guy to have around as a vet backup, but especially with that money, they're paying him $85 million to not play for them. That is how much they hated this guy and wanted him the fuck out of there. So I think if there was a coach that was a little more willing to deal with him, or just maybe a little more patient, I don't know what the answer is. I think you could see Russ maybe still in Denver, albeit in a backup role, but it was kind of just this bridge was burned, this relationship was beyond repair, and coupling that with the fact that he was not great on the field, we've got Russ finding a new home, and we've got, it has to be the worst contract in NFL history, right? With how it played out, there's really no argument.
Right now, yes, I don't think it will be the worst. I think our boy Groper Cleveland, unless he turns it the fuck around significantly and soon, I think he's going to surpass that. But yeah, it's just, and again, just the fact that they extended him. If they traded for this contract, a little different. But not only did they trade for him, they went and paid him this enormous sum of money Just a complete disaster, but watch out, it's spicy.
Oh my God, I will never get that out of my head. Pat, you touched on our boy Groper Cleveland. So you think that's going to play out as the worst contract? Does that mean you also think that's going to play out as the worst trade of all time? Because right now, these two are definitely in contention. I mean, if you want to go back, a little deeper into history, it's really only these two and then the Herschel Walker trade as far as like worst values for one team in one trade. Do you think the Russ trade is worse, or do you think the Deshaun trade is or will be worse?
I mean, I think with the Deshaun trade, you have to factor in who he is. Like,
Agreed.
You could say a lot about Russell Wilson being a diva and all this stuff, but, good guy. A good guy.
Yeah.
We're talking about someone who had been out of football for essentially, for a whole year, and then obviously he missed, 11 more games.
Yeah.
Not playing football, and to just a scumbag. And now it turns out that scumbag is not very good at football anymore.
Yeah.
Like, if Deshaun came back and was Deshaun of old, great.
Oh, sure, we're not talking about this, yeah.
But that's the thing but that's not the case, and I just think you combine everything with Watson, especially with the Browns are winning games with Joe Flacco, with 100-year-old Joe Flacco.
Future Patriot Joe Flacco, might I add.
Oh, here we go. So, so the fact that team is that close, that defense is so good. They've got a great running game. They got a great offensive line, and then just shit quarterback play to go behind it. Like,
yeah,
I don't foresee them, getting to a Super Bowl. God forbid, winning a Super Bowl with him under center. With Russ, it's just like they just went and got a guy that was just right about to fall off the cliff.
Yeah.
Prime.
They just didn't know it.
And I think we've been spoiled a little bit by like Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and guys who've just played forever. Mm-hmm. But like just the NFL, like guys don't play forever. And I think we've been spoiled by the fact that some of these quarterbacks have had insane primes. Insane insane primes. That matched the microphone right when you did that. That was perfect.
True.
That was perfect. God, sorry. God, I am cooked.
Pat's got ADD today. It's all right.
Today, oh God, no, that's what train of thought. Russ,
quarterback's getting older.
Yeah. But like, I think they just kind of thought like, oh, Russ is Russ has still got a lot left in the tank. Turns out he didn't. He just flat out didn't.
No, I thought the same. I'm not going to sit here on my high horse and be like, oh, I knew this trade was bad from the jump. I made a prediction that it was going to be Broncos to the Super Bowl the year he got traded there because I was just following the Matt Stafford formula that the Rams were following. I think that's what the Broncos themselves were trying to do. It's like, look, this team's super talented. They're a quarterback away. And I still think that was probably true. It's just Russ was not a quarterback of that magnitude that they needed when they were a quarterback away. So, definitely a wet fart of a way for his career to go down in Denver. But as far as it pertains to like worst trade of all time, it's easy to look at this one kind of in totality now that it's over. I think the Deshaun one is certainly trending toward being worse because we've now got, I know last year ended due to injury, but still, we've got basically a 2-season sample size now of what Deshaun is, and what he is nothing close to what he was in Houston, which is what they paid for, and he's a bad dude.
And fully guaranteed.
And they traded more picks than the Broncos, more first-rounders than the Broncos did to get him. So you've got the Texans who landed, I believe it was Kenyon Green in the 2022 draft. In 2023, it was the asset that basically allowed them to net Will Anderson, which is massive. And then this upcoming draft, we'll see what it is. Obviously, the pick isn't super high because despite Deshaun being bad and his injury, the Browns still had a good season. So we're looking at a pick, somewhere in the 20s. So we'll find out what that turns into. But yeah, as of right now, These trades are neck and neck. We'll put it that way. I could see it ending up being either one.
But the thing, too, with Denver is we're going to be sitting here for the next few years, every offseason be like, oh, well, they've got, their cap is strangled by Russell Wilson's contract. We're still going to be talking about this until the whole thing is played out, really. Because like you said, it's kind of played out, but it really hasn't. Because like this is really going to hinder them for the next few years, too.
Yeah, I did see somebody say, because I tweeted that I don't ever want to see somebody say that money is a reason a team can't or won't move on from a guy ever again. I'm like, if this team is willing to eat $1 bajillion in dead money, like I just wanted it to be a lesson that no team is going to sit there with bad quarterback play or bad coaching just because of what they're paying a guy. But somebody was like, yeah, but the Broncos owners are the Walmart heirs or whatever. They can afford. I'm like, the cap is still the cap. This is still $40 million a year tied up into the cap that they can't use. Whether they're more willing to be, not frugal, the opposite of frugal, and spend that money for a guy to not play for their team, that's fine, but it's still affecting them the same way it would affect anybody. Pat, this is some news on what Russ could possibly be doing next. So, according to Jeremy Fowler, Russ wants to help his new team by being a bargain, possibly on the vet minimum, since Denver's already paying him $39 million. Totally fair. Totally fair for Russ to not, be like, hey, you better pay me $20 million or else I'm not coming. This is basically just his contract. He can look at it that way, that $39 million. And he also wants to go to a team, according to Fowler, that not only to win, but that has an infrastructure of winning. So this is interesting to me because if he's looking for that, that tells me that he's not going to go somewhere to be a clear starter. Like what team that is set up to win and has a history of winning is really going to accept him as a starter?
Well,
I can think of maybe one.
I can think of one, but do we consider 9 wins a season winning? Do we consider winning records for 20 years or whatever winning?
I think for argument's sake, we do. And that team is the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are currently the Vegas favorites to land Russell Wilson at -200. So they fit the description of what Russ is looking for. If I look at this from a Steelers perspective, I don't really get it because to me, Russ and Pickett are essentially two sides of the same coin. I mean, they're different. I think they're different ends of their careers, obviously, but like Pickett is a guy who, if you want to give him another year to see what he's got, feel free, but I think we realize he's not very good. But Russ is also just not very good. So what's the point? Unless you're going to clear out your QB room, bring in Russ, and then maybe try to, draft somebody next year. I just don't see this team being overly competitive or having it make a very big difference by bringing in Russell Wilson and making him the starter.
I don't necessarily think it's going to be a big difference, but we talked about last week how Russ's ceiling is very capped. Like he had an okay year this past year. I think that's the best way to sum it up. But there was a point where he had more touchdowns and less interceptions than Patrick Mahomes. There was something going around at the beginning of the season about him. But Kenny Pickett, we have seen his floor is hell.
Yeah, his floor is unstartable completely.
With Russ at this point, I think based on what we saw last year, his floor is like you've got a smart veteran who can at the very least not be a downgrade on this pretty good supporting cast. You've got Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Pat Fryermuth. I'm not a Najee Harris fan, but you've got Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. Like this team is not awful, and we know and we hear about the defense. That's all we hear about is that Steelers defense. Mm-hmm. So I don't necessarily think he's going to vault them directly into contention, but I do think, especially if they're only paying him $1 million or $2 million a year,
yeah,
I do think that's worth it over Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph. Even who, at this point, I feel like if it's going to be one of those two, it's going to be Rudolph over Pickett. But,
true, it could be.
But I just think it's not going to be like a crazy jump, but you're not taking a huge swing at it the way the Broncos did. It's almost like they're bunting. It's almost like they're bunting or check swinging, which so I think the risk isn't terribly low. They're going to win 9 or 10 games regardless. With Mike Tomlin's curse. So, but more so that's the only place where he's going to go where he can start. And I'm saying that because if he goes to Las Vegas,
Pat, you and I are in the same boat here. Like we both are fans of teams that theoretically have this opening. Well, and I don't want to think about it.
The difference with the Patriots is they have one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the draft in their hands if they want it.
Correct.
As opposed to the Raiders, who were sitting there at 13, where they're going to have to trade up if they want J.J. McCarthy. And we talked about how Bo Nix called Mark Davis ugly. That totally happened. So he's not going to get drafted there. So that's why I'm more scared. I'm way more scared than I would be if I was you, just because the Raiders are just kind of more a less than great situation. A less than great situation revolving it. So
yeah, the Patriots essentially have said reports have come out that the Patriots have a plan to draft a quarterback at 3 and bring in a vet to, mentor that quarterback and start until that quarterback is ready to go, which, like, to me, Pat, is music to my fucking ears. So I think you're probably right. It is maybe a little less likely that Russ goes to a situation like that. And yeah, as far as the Steelers go, like, I guess I am with you. It is probably an upgrade over Pickett. Russ this year, one thing Russ ironed out this year compared to last year was he stopped with the game-breaking turnovers as much as he had in year one, which is big because having that floor on a team like the Steelers where, that defense can carry, much like what the Browns did this year. Like, they had a revolving door of quarterbacks, and as much as we like to talk up Joe Flacco, in totality, he still wasn't that good. It was just he did enough. That is the kind of thing Russ can do. My thing is just, like, as a Steeler, like, if you're a Steelers fan and you are heading into next season with Russell Wilson as your quarterback, like, yeah, it's probably better than Pickett for that 1 year, but, like, I don't know. I just feel like that sucks. That's just kind of a dud of a move, but I understand not every team is in a position to make a move for a guy that could be the true future.
Any move they could make realistically is going to be a dud. Yeah, there's just, again, like the Raiders, Steelers are in a worse position to try and get someone, but. And you look at it like Mike Tomlin, obviously a very, a veteran coach. They've got a great culture there. And, like, not to bring up our boy Arthur Smith again, but I could easily see Russell Wilson being the Ryan Tannehill of that Steelers offense. Like, he's not going to light it up, but, like, I don't know, the Steelers are just such, like, a mediocre team to me. Like, I don't know, mediocre feels a little, because they're going to, they're going
to make the playoffs, watch. Fucking shit.
Or get really close to it, but from Russ's perspective as well, like, again, if he wants to start, I think teams like New England, like Las Vegas, like Minnesota are going to prefer to go in other directions.
Yeah, I agree with you. My other thought outside of the Steelers, just to try and spitball and find potential fits for Russ, and this doesn't necessarily fit if what Fowler said is true about him looking for, a winner and an infrastructure of winning, but a team I thought about was Chicago, Pat, just because Russ's former offensive coordinator and Tufts alum Shane Waldron is going to be in Chicago now. Caleb Williams is likely basically 101% to be the number one pick and head to Chicago. So, you could look at a guy like that and think maybe he needs a veteran mentor who's been around the league a while, and maybe Russ could be that guy if he is willing to accept a true backup role, because I don't think anybody has any illusions about Caleb not starting week 1 of next season. So that's just a team kind of looking at it. Maybe there's a fit there, maybe Waldron. I don't know what Waldron thinks of Russ. Just because they work together doesn't mean he truly likes the guy. But
even at the end of his Seattle run, it was getting a little like, I mean, he missed some games, but like it was like his best years in Seattle. Probably most of them came with Darrell Bevell and not Shane Waldron to begin with. And they actually, because they had Brian Schottenheimer in there too. How did they even really cross paths?
I believe Waldron was only the OC in 2021. So
only 1 year. So
thing,
exactly where he wasn't great. Wasn't terrible, but he wasn't Russ. He wasn't Russ, so you never know. I think I think that's a good spot in theory, but I think that's just if he accepts that. Like if these teams like the Minnesotas, the Seattle, the Pittsburghs, the Las Vegas, I think if they say, hey, we're going to go in a different direction, then Carolina's another great idea there to bring in a veteran with Bryce Young.
That was a thought I had too, and I only backed off on it because they still have Dalton under contract for another year, and what's the point of getting rid of Dalton to just sign Russ? And they'd have to eat it was like $5 million in dead money. Yeah. I'm just like, you got one mid-veteran to have mentored your guy. You don't really need to change course. But yes, that thought did cross my mind because Canales was in Seattle for so many years as quarterbacks coach and passing game coordinator and all this stuff. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see where Russ ends up. I kind of feel for Steelers fans. I mean, look, maybe it's hard to say, asking Steelers fans, would you be satisfied with a season that played out the way the Browns did, right? Like you go in with maybe lowish expectations and then, Russ just kind of guides a great defense and a good enough offensive skill group to a playoff appearance, and then you lose because nobody's going to think a Russell Wilson Steelers team is going to win a Super Bowl. They're fucking not going to do that. But if you can at least tell Steelers fans, hey, we know you're not in position to really find your quarterback of the future. Maybe this is just a fun little stepping stone year. Maybe Russ can put it together enough. You can win a playoff game, get these guys some experience. That might be enough. I think sometimes I think in terms of like, not Super Bowl or bust, but like build for the Super Bowl or bust. And to me, Russ isn't a progress towards that, but there's not really much else they can do.
But exactly like I said, I think no matter what they do, they are not going to have that quarterback of the future unless they get a surprise late round dart or trade up or who knows. But yeah, I just think if that's a situation they're in, like, why not?
Yeah, it's a tough spot for Russ, a tough spot for Steelers fans if it comes to it, but who knows? Maybe he puts together some magic if he does go to the team that he is currently the Vegas favorite to land on. But as far as the Broncos are concerned, their next move at quarterback, I mean, I can't imagine it's Jarrett Stidham. Maybe it is, who knows? But the Broncos, I suspect their next move will be to find a quarterback in the draft. They are in a spot where they could trade up and go ahead.
Taysom Hill.
Not what I thought you were gonna say.
Who'd you think I was gonna say?
JJ McCarthy, which you wrote on this paper.
Well, yeah, but that's not the funny one. That's not the funny part.
I know. Taysom Hill to the Broncos has been rumored since Sean Payton put pen to paper there. That would be fucking hilarious to see Taysom as a full-time starter. But yeah, my expectation is the Broncos are going to be one of those teams that do not hesitate or, let a quarterback that they want fall by the wayside if they feel like they have the assets and the ability to move up for one. That could be J.J. McCarthy. I think it would be a little more surprising if they moved into the top three. So, I'm going to, just because every team in the top three, kind of needs a quarterback. So I can't imagine they trade out. But J.J. McCarthy could very well be a Bronco. Or, Pat, this could be a situation where we find Michael Penix or Bo Nix as a surprising maybe week one starter on a team like the Broncos, where they don't draft him with that being the initial intent. But if you head into camp with, only one of those guys and Stidham, obviously you're going to be like, all right, they're going to have a real shot to maybe
they're basically going to be the Bucs of last year is what that sounds like.
Yeah, basically Denver is not seeming like they are going to be a player for, Justin Fields or Kirk Cousins or these other quarterbacks that are going to be available. So their answer is probably going to have to be through the draft, and we will just have to see who that ends up being.
Yeah, but the thing is, like we talked about how the Steelers are going to be mediocre. The Broncos, they've got the Chiefs in their division. We're expecting a huge jump from the Chargers. The Raiders are usually good for eight or so wins in a season. Like, that's a tough division to play in. Like, I don't know if Bo Nix or Jarrett Stidham gives them much of a shot when they don't have a terrible cast of characters around that quarterback position.
Yeah,
and Sean Payton.
Again, it's like you can't, just go into a lab and build your quarterback, though. So you got to just play with the pieces that are available to you. And maybe Penix or Nix is that guy. Maybe it's somebody else. Maybe it's Sam Hartman with his nice hair. Pat, the other big move we had over the past week, Marquez Valdez-Scantling got released. I'm just kidding. That did happen, but fuck that guy. Mike Evans signed. Yeah, he got released like a day after we recorded last week's pod. MVS got released. Just FYI to finish that thought. Mike Evans, though, signed an extension with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 2 years, $52 million. So this takes away the clear-cut, far and away best potential wide receiver free agent on the market. And honestly, Pat, I'm a little surprised just at the timing, because it sounded like Evans was pretty set on at least testing free agency. But the Bucs, I guess, came to him with an offer that he couldn't refuse, which I get. I mean, $26 million a year is no joke. And look, this is a good fit for Mike. We've seen what he's done in Tampa for years, assuming they bring back Baker. From a fantasy perspective, Mike is going to be an interesting asset next year once again. But now this wide receiver class, free agent-wise, Pat, is ass. Like, we're looking at, T. Higgins is theoretically available for trade, but the top guys available now, free agent wise, for now, and this could change as well, is Calvin Ridley and Hollywood Brown. And I know that's not, bottom barrel receivers, but those are not guys I'm excited about. Like, if your team is looking for a new wide receiver one and they're like, this is our big splash move, that's bad.
And apparently the Jags really want Calvin Ridley back,
which I do not understand. at all, because they have to, what is it? They have to give the Falcons a second or third round pick just for if they keep Calvin Ridley on the roster. That was the condition, which is why people thought they would not re-sign him. There's a compensatory pick situation
Maybe
going
they just
on
don't
there.
care.
I guess they just want to keep Calvin. I mean, sure, look, maybe he's got some juice that we don't know about, but that's a little surprising of a development to me, because I have been seeing the same thing, that it seems like he's going to stick around. But whether that is the case or not, this is still a very, very mid free agent wide receiver class. The big thing to note there is that it's shaping up, and we've kind of known this, but it's shaping up even more so, that this wide receiver draft class is super deep.
That's where all the money's getting made.
This is where teams that are wide receiver needy are going to need to be moving and shaking in the draft to find their answer, because I do not think they're going to find it in free agency. And I mean, there's the obvious benefit of the guys in the draft don't cost you much money up front. You hope they'll cost you money down the line, but God, I would rather at this point take a gamble on maybe one of the tier 2 draft wide receivers and hope they turn into a stud, which they very well could, than pay Calvin Ridley, in the teens of millions of dollars a year kind of deal. So I think this is just, it's a downer for teams that have a lot of cap space and need receivers, i.e. the Patriots, because now we need to just, hope that we get one in the draft and can maybe, I don't know, trade back up in the first round or just find one in the second. But these teams that need receivers and have cap space, it's like, sorry, the store's empty. We're sold out. We got nobody left, because unless you want Tyler Boyd, you're kind of shit out of luck. So
Gabe Davis.
God, fuck Gabe Davis.
Honestly, I'm not completely out on Gabe Davis, just in the sense where it was.
Can you stop? He's trash.
It was the opportunity. Like his opportunity was inconsistent. He's not. Yeah, they didn't throw him the ball every other week.
He played 98% of snaps. If they weren't
he was
throwing
getting
him
cardio.
The ball, if they weren't throwing him the ball, that tells me something's fucking wrong with him.
I'm not. My door's not completely closed on Gabe Davis in a new setting.
Oh my God. He had 2 different coordinators this year, and neither one was able to get him the ball. What does that tell you? All right.
Well, Joe Brady was just like run.
I guess. Oh man, Pat, you could have Gabe Davis in our draft. That is all you, my man. All right. We will move on. There was a big retirement, Pat, and as you so eloquently put it here, it is Taylor Swift's boyfriend's brother has retired. Jason Kelce, hanging him up after many years in the NFL. I believe he's 36 years old. So great career from Jason. Did have a Super Bowl victory. I feel like his Super Bowl win kind of, people almost forget about it because it was like before he was like really in the spotlight as a personality. All people remember now is the Eagles falling short, in the Super Bowl to the Chiefs and then not even making it this past year. But Jason does retire with a ring, which is nice. And yeah, look, if you haven't seen the video of his press conference, very emotional, especially if you are an Eagles fan or just a fan of Jason or a fan of football. Maybe bring a tissue with you if you're going to go ahead and watch that, because it was definitely emotional. Travis was crying. Everyone's fucking crying. It was a very cool send-off for him, and I'm sure this is not the last we've seen of Jason Kelce. The man is got the podcast. He's been everywhere, so I can't imagine.
Let's be honest. He is the next star of sports media.
Yeah, he is.
And Travis is too. Whenever Travis decides to hang it up as well, these two, these two are basically what people want the Mannings to be. Because
yeah, that's true.
The Mannings are boring. The Manning cast, I don't watch it much because I'd rather listen to traditional commentary than those two just pause for long amounts of time. Eli's just not meant for TV, but these two, oh my God. These two have the knowledge and they have the personality, and obviously now they have the fame. Taylor Swift has completely put them on. Travis Kelce is. What would you say? Like Travis Kelce, one of the best tight ends in NFL history. He's probably like a C-list celebrity before Taylor Swift. Like not even maybe.
Yeah.
Like not even maybe.
It's hard to have like an unbiased perspective of how popular or well-known Kelce was for like non-NFL fans. But yeah, I'm sure it was basically nobody before Taylor. I just don't know where it is now for like non-football fans and just casual people. I'm sure. Yeah, I think C-list is fair because Taylor's.
I think he's higher than that now. I'm saying is so? That's what I mean. Like she's like this guy's like a celebrity now. He's not just like a celebrity to us, he's a celebrity. Right. He's a celebrity. So those two can do whatever they want. You know, I don't necessarily think like Jason is going to be in the booth next year with someone. I think he's going to be closer to Peyton Manning or Pat McAfee in terms of like what they're doing. And also, God, I would much prefer the Kelceys than Pat McAfee as well. But I mean, again, a really good player. Yeah, my dad and I were talking about it last night. Like, basically, like, what does it take for a lineman to get in the Hall of Fame? And it's basically like, did you play for one team for a long time? Yes. Were you an Iron Man? Did you play a lot of games? Yes. Was the team good? Like, did they have good offense, good run offense? Yes. There you go. I mean, because you look at Jason Peters, who is 2 spots down from him, was better. Like, Jason Peters is a clear-cut Hall of Famer. But yeah, he's just a really likable guy. You know, like Travis, people are like, oh, Travis is such a douche now. But like Jason is just a really likable guy. And I was also told he hadn't retired, though. Like when that report came out after the season, he's like, oh, no, I'm not retired.
Yeah, I know.
Stop it.
He pulled a Tom Brady. You can't announce it before I do, and if you do, I might spite you and come back. Yeah, Jason is a very good dude, and I think, Pat, you talking about his Hall of Fame case, you know, I haven't looked super far into it, but those are all good points, and I think the fact of just the tush push in general is also a boost to his resume.
Innovative.
Like this man was the centerpiece to the most unstoppable play in football, and I think his case is only going to be helped next season when they inevitably run it far less effectively, if I had to guess.
Or if they ban it.
It doesn't seem like they're going to ban it. I think even the NFL, just to go on a tangent, probably wants to see what it looks like once without Jason Kelce. And like if it's just as effective, maybe they get rid of it. But we've watched other teams try to run it and be not super effective. I mean, there's a reason. So Jason certainly made his mark with that, and the extra little fame of his last name being Kelce and vaguely associated with a more glamorous player in Travis Kelce and a more glamorous celebrity in Taylor Swift certainly won't hurt his Hall of Fame case when that time comes. But thank you, Jason, for a great career. Good luck riding off into the sunset. And as far as the Manning thing goes, Pat, I think I'm with you. I think they're really funny in like scripted things, but they are, for like broadcast, like
I've just never been.
It's not
the
great.
only times like I'll tune into the Manning cast is if there's like an interesting.
I don't watch it. Yeah.
Well, if there's an interesting guest, like if there's a guest that I want to see, I'll tune in. But besides that, I just watch Monday Night Football on the boring old standard broadcast.
I'm with you. 100%. All right. Moving on to the franchise tags, Pat. Today was the deadline for franchise tags to be placed on players, and we saw many of them get placed. So just to recap, T. Higgins was tagged, last week. L'Jarius Sneed also tagged several days ago, and now we've got the guys who were kind of up in the air. Also, both T. Higgins and L'Jarius Sneed could still be traded, so just keep an eye on
They seem like
those
definitely
guys.
the two most likely. It
The
seems like
two most likely.
The rest of these guys are probably going to stay put.
Yeah, everybody else is, their team is actively working to sign them to long-term deals, and they don't seem to want to get rid of them. So we're looking at Justin Madubuike of the Ravens, Jalen Johnson with the Bears, Antoine Winfield Jr. with the Bucks, Brian Burns with the Panthers, Michael Pittman Jr. with the Colts, and Josh Allen with the Jags. Long-term deals, Pat, certainly seem to be on the horizon for these guys. Their teams are not actively looking to move them. None of those tags. Very surprising. And the Jaguars specifically, Pat, to make room for Josh Allen, are making a few moves here. So they released Darius Williams, and they are also likely, at least rumored,
I believe that's official now.
Is it official now?
Scherf, and yeah.
Okay, Brandon Scherf and Rayshon Jenkins to make room for Josh Allen. Now, this is a little disconcerting for the Jags in general. So Brandon Scherf was actually PFF's 4th highest rated guard in pass blocking. So
Brandon Scherf is really good.
The Jags are not losing a nothing piece here on the line. Like, they are losing a important piece here that protects Trevor Lawrence, and that line as a whole still wasn't very good last year. And now you take away one of your pivotal pieces. I would be a little nervous if I was A, Trevor Lawrence, or B, a Jags fan, just at how functional this offense might be. Obviously, you've got an entire offseason left to go. Free agency hasn't opened yet. We'll see how they fill that hole. But for now, a little concerning. But this is the cost that it takes to, retain great players like Josh Allen sometimes.
Yeah, and I was looking at some of Josh Allen's numbers, and it just made me absolutely sick to my stomach that the Raiders took fucking Clelin Ferrell. before him. That hurts really, really bad. Josh Allen and Max Crosby coming off both ends. Oh, here we go. Clip it.
Ayo.
God. Oh, but no. I mean, maybe the Jags would consider trying to get Sheriff back, but yeah, I mean, they must have weighed it out and said this guy's not worth what we're paying him, and this guy is worth what we're trying to pay him.
Yeah.
And they did it. And I mean, as for some of the other guys, like it seems like Antoine Winfield is going to get a long-term deal. Like that is almost a certainty. Jalen Johnson, to a lesser extent, but that's the same thing. It doesn't seem like we're sitting in any of these positions where any of these guys might hold out outside of maybe Snead, but even then I don't think he's good enough to do that. So there's not going to nearly be as much drama as last year because none of those running backs got tagged, and for good reason.
Yeah, no, none of those tags are a surprise. And as it pertains to Josh Allen, yeah, I mean, you got to retain a star any way you can. And look, as great as Brandon Scherff is, and that is a hole that's going to be on their line, guards are a little bit more replaceable than elite tackles are. So I think this is not as bad as it could be, but it's still it's not encouraging for a line that was already, kind of a tag that was a little bit surprising here. Kyle Duggar did not get the franchise tag. He got the transition tag. So
not on my radar at all.
Yeah, so this was interesting. And basically, for those of you that don't know, the transition tag is, here's the difference between it and the franchise tag. Basically, every franchise tag that gets applied to players is the non-exclusive franchise tag. So in theory, other teams can make offers to those players, and if that player were to leave, the team that player was previously on would get compensated with 2 first-round picks. The transition tag works similarly, except it is cheaper for the team applying it to the player. That player can still talk to other teams, but if that player were to leave for a new team, his previous team will not get compensated at all. So basically what this is a bet by the Patriots that they don't think
the Patriots also able to match, I believe. They're also
they are,
it's like
yes.
restricted free agency. They'd be able to match anything, which
they are able to match.
And they would in this case.
Exactly. So what this is from the Patriots is a gamble that, no team is going to come with some Godfather offer that they won't be able to match. And that, honestly, that Duggar may not receive an offer at all with a decent safety free agent class. So I just, there's no way on earth the Patriots, with all the cap room they have, would let Kyle Duggar walk for nothing. So all this tells me is that he is as good as a Patriot for several years. There's an extension looming, I would think.
We've shit on Bill Belichick as a drafter, and rightfully so. But man, to get this kid out of Lenore Ryan in it was either the second or third round, it raised eyebrows. But this kid can play. What a find.
Yeah, this is a hard hitting safety that Bill plucked out of D2, I don't know, D7, I don't know. And hopefully looking like he's going to be a Patriot for a long time coming. So just because it's the transition tag, basically just I guess a slight risk reward for the Patriots, but it's ultimately he's going to be a Patriot. The interesting consequence of this is that if any Patriot was going to be tagged, we thought it might be Mike Onwenu, the guard, who has been very, very good for the Patriots for the last few years. Instead, that is not the case. Obviously, you can only apply a tag to one player per team. So we'll see what happens here. I expect the Patriots to re-sign him. Again, as long as he wants to be a Patriot, that is, because that could factor in as well. But the Patriots have all this cap room. This is a potential cornerstone piece on your offensive line, and there's just no good reason to let him walk. So I imagine them not tagging him is hopefully a reflection that they also think they can re-sign him. So we'll see what happens with him.
Even though obviously you see this where a lot of offensive linemen are in really high demand, but the Patriots have the cap space to handle it. If the Patriots were in a tighter cap spot, he'd be the one that they're tagging.
Right. Yeah. The only interesting part here is that the Patriots now have no control over whether he actually chooses to stay or not. They can't just keep him with the tag. So we'll see what happens once free agency opens up. Hopefully he is a New England Patriot once again, sooner rather than later. And then officially not tagged, Pat, some guys that it was, potentially up in the air. Christian Wilkins with the Miami Dolphins, and of course Saquon Barkley with the New York Giants. Neither of them tagged, so they will hit unrestricted free agency. Christian Wilkins is an interesting one to me because the Dolphins did not use their tag, and I imagine losing Christian Wilkins for nothing would be a pretty big blow. So we'll see what happens with him. That is certainly a big addition to this free agent class that teams didn't necessarily think would be there. I looked and I'm like, could the Patriots snipe him? Because again, we have $100 million in cap space, but we kind of, we have Devon Godchaux at Godchaux. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Terry Bradshaw,
at defensive tackle. Certainly Wilkins much better. So, from my GM perspective, maybe we cut him. We take Wilkins, replace one former Dolphin with another. Who knows? Either way, certainly a big piece hitting free agency. And then Saquon, we were pretty sure this was coming. It was just that Giants GM Joe Shane kind of floated the possibility. He's like, whoa, hold on. Maybe we could still tag him. He didn't tag him.
They also didn't tag Xavier McKinney.
Yes, so the Giants elected just not to use their tag.
Yeah.
And so they could potentially get hit pretty hard here with their team getting poached. Saquon,
I think he's gone. I think he's gone.
I think so too. And I'm hoping it's Houston, which we floated, and I think it's just the most logical fit possible.
Yep.
It's for a team that needs a running back is, slowly, I guess, quickly peaking with C.J. Stroud and the rest of that offense. That team is that is the perfect spot for a 26-year-old running back in his prime to go and play in a high-powered offense. Speaking of the Texans, re-signed Dalton Schultz, 3 years, $36 million, kind of a not random, but it's sort of random deal that popped up today. Dalton Schultz played pretty well for them, so he's going to stick around and be the Texans tight end here now for the next 3 years, it seems. And then, Pat, the big, probably biggest quarterback domino, free agent-wise at least, Kirk Cousins, possibly going to Atlanta. Now, I think we've talked about 1,500 different quarterbacks going to Atlanta because it's the most attractive place for a quarterback to go with all the weapons they have. But they are now, Atlanta is minus 225 Vegas favorites to land Kirk Cousins, and PFT is reporting that he is looking for houses in Atlanta. So I will say off the top, this feels like one of those reports that we could look back on and be like, that meant nothing. Why the fuck you had bad info? That was stupid. Just because I feel like these things about like looking for houses and this guy's saying this and that never actually come true. But we'll go off of it for now because it very well could be true. If Kirk Cousins goes to Atlanta, man, those weapons are just to the moon.
I love it. I love it. And again, Kirk Cousins stays in the same territory he's been in is like a low end QB1. A guy that, you're not going to be thrilled when you draft him, but you're going to get pretty solid production. But I would love that so much. That for that trio of Bijan, London, and Pitts, like, that's a huge game changer in my opinion. Just to raise the floor, we talked about how like Russ was a slight floor raise from Kenny Pickett. This is a huge floor raise from Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke or whoever the hell, Jonnu Smith. But yeah, that would just be, and I pretty much think that's gonna happen. Like, I would be very surprised if he is not a Falcon. It just seems like the stars are aligning there, and he could be, the glue that offense desperately needs. Desperately.
It's interesting because again, there's the Justin Fields factor. We were sitting here last week talking about how, it seemed like maybe he was earmarked for the Falcons, but the fact that trade still has not happened tells me that it could be leaning toward this. Like the Falcons would rather wait till free agency opens, go get Kirk, and maybe Fields doesn't get traded till free agency opens because like the Bears, the Bears have come out and said they're motivated and they want to get this deal done. I think other teams, specifically the Falcons, are like, we want to see if we can get Kirk first. Sorry. So, yeah. And if they don't, they don't.
I would, as young as Fields is and the potential, I'd rather have Kirk Cousins right now. Like, talking as a fan of a team who needs a quarterback, I would much rather have Kirk Cousins than Justin Fields. But that said, Justin Fields is he is the number 2 option in terms of not outside of the draft, of course.
Yeah, I think I'd rather have Fields. From the Falcons' perspective, it's different because the Falcons are quite literally equipped to win a Super Bowl if they get a quarterback like Kirk Cousins. Like that, it's not an impossible task with the talent they have on that roster. But in general, like for a team like the Raiders, oh my God, my camera died.
You look good, man.
This? Thank you. I'm looking sexy. Hold on, I'll replace the battery in a second. But in general, for a team like the Raiders, getting a guy who's 25 compared to 35, 24 compared to 35, I feel like that makes a lot more sense.
That's fair.
I could see that. I don't know where Justin Fields is ultimately going to end up. It seems like he's being rumored kind of everywhere at this
that's
point.
The thing.
So it's very I don't know. It's
If
tough.
if we're saying like, oh, Kirk to Atlanta, great. Oh God, I just lost my train of thought. Maybe Russ to Pittsburgh, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
The top three teams are taking quarterbacks: the Bears, the Commanders, and the Patriots. We think the Broncos are going to trade up for probably J.J. McCarthy. That leaves the Raiders and the Vikings really as potential landing spots. But like, would Justin Fields? Well, Justin Fields wouldn't have a say. But like, would Justin Fields and Luke Getsy work?
No.
Like that. Like that's what I mean. Like that's just really, really, really dubious. Like I think Minnesota would be probably the likeliest spot for Fields right now.
Yeah, I mean, I will say Justin Fields in that Viking purple sounds pretty good. I think that would look pretty good. Let's see if I can get my camera back on here, and bang bang, there we go. Luckily, I have camera batteries next to me. For anybody watching live, sorry you had to be deprived of my beautiful face for a little bit, but
It's just looking
we're
at
back.
me for a while.
that's a tough scene. Yeah, I think Justin Fields possibly landing in Minnesota is certainly on the table. But Pat, there is a fun little nugget rumor from Rich Eisen. Trey Lance could apparently be the new quarterback in Minnesota. He is a Minnesota native. He's from Marshall, Minnesota, and this is literally just a rumor from Rich Eisen. But Rich Eisen is not like an uncredible source.
No.
So like
No, not at
it's
all.
worth thinking about as a possibility of coming true. So what would you think of that, Pat? Is that just a massive mistake, or is there some potential?
I would not just bring in Trey Lance and say, okay, here's the keys, drive this car. If you want to bring him in to compete with someone else, sure, great. Like, because we still really haven't seen what Trey Lance can do. Like, for that fit in San Francisco was just awful. Was awful.
Yep.
Obviously the rumor was that Kyle Shanahan wanted Mac Jones. And Mac Jones would have been a much better fit because you look at what guys like Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy have done in his system. We've never really got to see Lance because I think Shanahan saw us straight up, in the offseason last year, like, this guy's not it, and he's never going to be it for us. But who's to say he's not going to be it for someone else? We're still talking about a guy who's got a missile of an arm, great athleticism, he can run. But that said, I am not willing, again, like the Raiders say, if the Raiders brought in him to compete with someone else, sure, but I would not feel comfortable just flat out bringing in Trey Lance and saying, hey, you are our guy. I can't do it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, look, I want as much as anybody to see what he can do with game reps. I'm not in the camp that like this is some sleeping giant prospect. Like I think a lot of people, honestly, a lot of younger kids probably who are just too active on social media have disillusioned themselves into thinking that Trey is still going to be this guy, who is worthy of being the third overall pick and worthy of a trade of 3 first-round picks to go up and get him. To me, it's just if the rumor is true, it's definitely an indication that the Vikings are a little down bad and, kind of scrambling for options, assuming Kirk wants to leave, which regardless of if it's for Atlanta or not, very much seems like Kirk's time in Minnesota is done. Look, Trey Lance is a guy who was traded from San Francisco to Dallas for a 4th-round pick. Like no other team was willing to pony up anything more than a 4th-rounder for this guy. And I know circumstances have changed because that trade was right before the season. Obviously the Vikings were not thinking like we're going to need a guy to replace Kirk after this year. Like that wasn't
Kirk's
necessarily.
going to tear his Achilles.
Kirk's going to tear his Achilles. Yeah, I understand we're in a different place, but I can't imagine any team if they weren't willing to, outbid the Cowboys for him with a 4th-round pick. Like there's no way any team around the NFL is looking at Trey Lance and thinking he's some dark horse like could potentially be really good guy. He would be a complete dart throw for Minnesota. But yeah, it would be certainly weird if it transpired the way Rich Eisen kind of made it sound, which is that Lance would be somewhat anointed as the guy. So I can't imagine that happens. That would be a shocking development.
And I thought about, I don't know if this is necessarily going to happen, but at least I think it should, maybe. The Saints for a quarterback like Justin Fields. Derek Carr, I love the dude. He's bad.
Yeah.
And Jameis Winston, love the dude. He's bad.
You can say the same about Fields, but at least he's younger, I guess.
I would much rather have Fields right now.
Yeah.
But because Dennis Allen's seat is on fire. Like, it's not even a hot seat. Like, the fire department is actively working to put it out.
Saints are broke as fuck is the problem.
That's the thing. It's like, so, but in theory, that could be, or maybe should be, another QB spot. Obviously not for fucking Trey Lance, but maybe Justin Fields. But again, we will see. I mean, we've still got 2 weeks. Like, well, this time in 2 weeks, we'll be talking about
8 days until free agency opens, March 13th.
Oh, so of course it opens the day.
Our next show will be a day before free agency opens. Yes. But
Oh,
we can,
God, do I work that next day? Could we move that? That might not be a terrible idea.
It might not be. My only thing is how much. I guess there'd be a decent amount of hours that would transpire. I have pea brain. I don't remember how like hot and heavy free agency is right off the bat. Like, are we going to see a bunch of deals in the first like 2 hours?
Typically, I think it's not. I don't think it's as heavy as NBA free agency.
The NBA is the deals are done beforehand.
Yeah,
they
there's
just don't tell anybody.
Hilarious tampering. One sec. Let me look. Let me look at my work schedule. 6:30. We'd have to do it. I don't know.
We might as well just wait. We'll let the full week of free agency play out.
We'll have more to talk about, but a fair thought. Thinking out loud on air.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, sorry, guys, you've been privy to our team's chat really quick. But look, that is it as far as the major moves. You don't wear pants during the show. I'm calling HR. That is it.
You're lucky I've got underwear on
of the week.
You know what?
This is on YouTube, Pat. This is not on any of those. This is not an OnlyFans podcast. Pat's naked from the waist down, I think now.
Yeah, we're dicks out on the podcast right now.
If your camera falls, we're canceled.
It's my laptop. It's my laptop.
Right,
so
okay,
if this thing somehow falls and pans down,
then we deserve what we get.
It would need to be zoomed in like 100% anyway to see it. So,
God damn. Okay, let me transition now.
What the fuck is happening? What the hell is going on?
That will do it for the biggest moves of the week. Pat, we did. Oh my fucking God, we did have another big event, not Pat's wiener, from this past week, which was the NFL Combine. So, in general, the Combine I find slightly silly, but there were a bunch of headlines.
For sure.
There were a bunch of headlines that came out of it. Most notably, Xavier Worthy breaking the sound barrier with his 40-yard dash, setting a new record for the 40-yard dash with a 4.22 or 4.21. I
think it was 4.21.
Yeah. 4.21, whatever it was, he broke the record and is certainly on a lot more people's radars. Pat, you have here that he was so fast that he summoned the ghost of Al Davis, which...
Like the WWE meme where Vince McMahon comes out of the... Or is that... or whoever comes out of the fucking casket.
The Undertaker. The Undertaker comes out of the casket, yes. And look, last week we were asked, we had a viewer question, who would be the biggest riser from the Combine? It's him. It's Xavier Worthy. Anytime you break a record that... granted was held by John Ross, right? That could be a good or a bad thing, but at least he's making the headlines, setting himself apart from some of the other, like, again, tier 2 sort of NFL draft wide receivers. At the top, you've got Harrison, Neighbors, and Adunze. After that, it's like, we'll figure it out who the next best guys are. We think we have an idea, but Xavier Worthy, potentially in that conversation at least now. Do we think, Pat, this is an important question, that you could beat his time given a 4.5 second cushion?
So basically, this came up at work, and the person that posed it was actually saying it about a dude that was actually bigger than me, a bigger dude than I am. So I would think I'm a bit more fleet-footed. I mean, I think I can run an 8.7. I think I can run an 8.7 40.
I think you could too.
But that's not funny. So let's say 4 seconds. Let's just say force. I think we're getting into nervous territory.
8.2 is where it gets dicey.
Yeah, I think 8.2 is tough to ask for. I'll probably run like a 911 or something hilarious.
Jesus
But
Christ. We timed 40s like years ago, so my time would definitely be different now, but we timed 40s probably when I was a sophomore in sophomore in college, just for fun. And I think I ran like a 6 even. Granted, I weighed about 150 pounds at the time, so like understandable, but yeah, I think still I'm definitely breaking the +4 seconds.
You can do it. I mean, you're in good shape. I'm in
bulkier
rough
than
shape.
I once was, but your back might just give out mid-run.
Yeah, I might just like fucking disintegrate.
Yeah, guys, let me know what you think my Vegas line would need to be, that it would be dicey whether I broke it or not. Again, Xavier Worthy ran a 4.2. I'm thinking we take plus 2.5.
Oh,
maybe?
boy.
But it's plus 2.5. That would take it to 6.7. Again, I think if I'm remembering right, I think I ran about a 6 back then. So, a terrible form. I don't know how how to fucking run it. But
Our boy Nate in the chat, Pat wants to be the next coach of the Buffalo Bills, confirmed. Bring me in as a motivational speaker, Sean McDermott.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say the same shit that you do.
Just referencing various terrorist attacks. The fact that happened, I will not let that be forgotten.
Dude, that is one of my
absurd.
favorite things that has happened in, honestly, recent memory in the NFL. Like that.
This season really ran the spectrum of just like ridiculous storylines that should hopefully be remembered, but people have such short memories that a lot of it will get lost. But like you've got, the Pastronaut Josh Dobbs and his insanity running. I think like right behind that you've got Sean McDermott 9/11 fucking speech. All right, some other highlights from the NFL Combine, mostly about the 40 times because that's all people really care about. Jalen Wright, Tennessee running back, ran a 4.38, which was a little bit faster than people might have thought. So he is now a little bit more on the radar of sleeper running backs. We're looking at a guy who's probably going somewhere inside the top 100 or so, but I think I believe
running
I saw
back is so open. Like I don't think that there's a clear cut number one. Like I think there's going to be a lot of moving and shaking.
Mel Kiper suggested he could be RB1, which is not a total shock just because this class didn't have any clear cut.
They didn't have a Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, there's no Bijan Robinson. There's no Saquon. There's no Ezekiel Elliott in this draft. Far from it. So maybe he will be. Maybe top 100 is underselling it. Maybe he's top 50. But we're not looking at a day one pick for really any running back. But either way, Jalen Wright has garnered some hype.
I think we'll get
his
one.
40-yarder. Think we'll get one on day one? Really?
I think we're going to get... No, not day one. Oh, sorry. I meant to say day two.
One.
Oh, day one. I'm sorry.
I could see them on day two for sure.
I don't know why I thought you just said in the first 3 rounds, but okay, no,
maybe,
God, no. Yeah,
maybe I misspoke. Who knows? Another running back here.
Smoke.
Isaac Guerendo. Don't mind us. We just have ADHD like Family Guy.
Dude,
references.
I just worked.
We're just like
I literally got home from work, disintegrated my toilet, and then got on this thing. I am fucking wrecked right now, man.
That's fried. All right, we'll continue here. Another running back that made some headlines because he ran an even faster 40, Isaac Guerendo out of Louisville. He ran a 4.33. So look, again, and this is why I don't think like the combine should matter all that much. Like I feel like people are gonna overrate and be like, oh, this is like a dude now. Like he's fast. He's faster than we thought he was, but that doesn't mean he has good vision or anything like that.
The other thing that was the most notable about Guerendo's is that he was the fastest 40 time by a running back over 220 pounds since 2003.
Okay,
so I think it's more
that.
so the speed and the size that but again, I still probably put him behind Blake Corum, Jonathan Brooks, Jalen Wright. Like he's still kind of like a fringe top 5 guy here, but I think in the lead up to this draft, this order of running backs is going to flip-flop all over the place. But I bet a couple of them we'll be talking about, at least a couple of them in terms of fantasy.
Oh, certainly.
Come late summer when we're starting to really get into draft season.
I mean, look, guys find themselves in just very advantageous situations as late as day 3 of the draft, and
James Robinson,
as late as round 5, 6, even undrafted. I mean, even Dameon Pierce was like a 4th round pick, I believe, and just stumbled into a starting role in year 1 where he was very, very good. Year 2, not so much. But Pat, we've also got Brian Thomas. This was maybe a more notable 40 time than Xavier Worthy, strictly because Thomas ran a 4.33. So you're looking at, 0.12 seconds slower than Worthy. But Thomas is 6'3", 209. Worthy is 5'11", 165. Sorry, I have 265 here. He's not 265 pounds. 5'11", 165. So, that's a small dude. He's running super fast, not taking that away from him. But Brian Thomas, to have that combination of just size and speed, that is certainly going to be intriguing for NFL teams.
I do think he's going to end up being the 4th one off the board after Harrison, Odunze, and Neighbors in whatever order. But I think he's going to, stand out from that kind of B tier. Yeah. And be that first guy off. But yeah, I liked him to the Bucks as like a Mike Evans replacement, but this is a guy that could work It's a guy that could work anywhere. This is a guy that'll work anywhere. So
I'll tell you what, Brian Thomas would be a guy I'd be thrilled to have in New England if he were to potentially trade back into the middle or back end of the first round, wherever Brian Thomas ends up going, to pair with our hopefully new quarterback. Pat, speaking of quarterbacks, probably the biggest one that stood out at the Combine, Michael Penix. One of the more impressive throwers, which we knew coming in, but he just kept showing it day in and day out at the Combine. Penix also measured in at 6'2", which that wasn't a surprise, but what was maybe a surprise, he registered top 10 all-time hand size at the Combine. Don't wink at me. With 10.5 inches, don't wink at that either, which is the same as Anthony Richardson last year.
All you need is 3.
It's all about the motion in the ocean. Same as Anthony Richardson last year, but Anthony Richardson is 6'6". So we're looking at 2 guys, same hand size, which in the NFL, let's be honest, does matter a little bit. And Penix is 4 inches shorter and has the same size hand. So this is sort of potentially a measurement that could translate to him being a viable NFL quarterback more so than people might have thought by just going off the tape.
I just think the biggest thing with Michael Penix is the fact that he's had 2 major knee injuries. I think had he not had that, I think we're talking about probably a guaranteed first rounder. I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. But in a few years from now, we may be teams may be kicking themselves, be like, oh man, we were worried about him, and now he's tearing up the NFL, which I don't think is a completely unrealistic scenario.
No,
but
certainly not.
But yeah, I mean, I think, the hand size, the hand size, aside, I think people know what kind of skills he has. It's just going to be like, are teams willing to, to take a chance on a guy with such a, daunting injury history? And I do think it is going to knock him out of the first round. I do think we're not going to see him taken until day 2.
Yeah, but Penix is a guy. Again, in this, I'm not saying this just because his hand's measured in as being pretty fucking big. Is a guy that I think all these QB needy teams that aren't in the top 3 or 4 need to be having their eyes on Michael Penix in the second round or wherever the value deems appropriate for him, because he's a guy that I could very easily see, like you said, Pat, tearing up the NFL, because we've seen he has really all the skills to do it. And if the only red flags are injury and
his knees.
Age, I guess, but every quarterback in this draft is actually a little bit older than you would think, except for Drake May. I believe Drake May is only 22. But all these guys are kind of, approaching 25 in a way. Yeah. I don't think that should be a major knock on Penix. And yeah, if he can stay healthy, which I mean, he just did it this past year in college to an incredible degree, this could be a guy that it's like you said, wow, how do we miss out on him? So if teams need a quarterback and are not positioned to get one of the top ones, that's, I think, the guy they should be going for. So a guy we've also talked about, Pat, on the show quite a bit is Blake Corum. Now, speaking of measurements, he is a short boy. Actually, he was listed on Michigan's website as 5'8", actually measured in at under 5'8", 5'7", and 6'8", which is not obviously very far off of 5'8". Which is not far off of 5'8", but it goes to show that it was not his measurement was not underselling him by any means. And the fact of the matter, and why this matters maybe a little bit, is there are just not many successful running backs at that height. I mean, you have the outliers. You have Barry Sanders. You have Maurice Jones-Drew, who were very short and obviously incredibly good at the position.
But more so the gadget guys have kind of worked, like Darren Sproles.
Mm-hmm.
for
Yeah.
example. But yeah, if you want to be like a true pure runner, Sanders and MJD are really the only two that came to my mind.
Yeah, so it's tough. Look, he's gonna be an outlier in terms of his size if he's gonna be getting an opportunity in the NFL as like a primary ball carrier. But the way he runs, I mean, we've seen what he can do as a running back. So I feel like even though he is a physical outlier, this is still a guy that I have decent faith in. It's just if you are strictly an analytics guy and strictly going off of the history of what players succeed based on the heights and weights that they are, this is definitely a guy that is just a little bit more dicey of a proposition than maybe we thought he was when we thought he was, a full 5'8" or maybe a secret 5'9" that we didn't know about. He's short, and if he succeeds in the NFL, it's going to be going against the grain of most running backs that have seen success in the NFL, although there are the exceptions like MJD and Barry Sanders.
Always the exceptions, yeah.
All right, there were obviously a bunch of guys also who just didn't participate in the Combine, Pat. We mentioned this last week. You got Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors did not participate. Sam Hartman, I mentioned him earlier, funny enough, was the only quarterback to run the 40. So you had guys do the measurements and you had guys do some passing drills, but Hartman was the only one to run the 40, and to the point where he actually had to wait and like catch his breath before he ran his second rep, because normally you don't have to worry about that. You just have the other quarterbacks go, and by the time you're next up, like your breath is obviously going to be caught. But he was the only one running it. And this just brought up a question, and I don't want this to be like jumping to conclusions, but with all the guys that opted out, and with that just funny visual of Hartman having to run the 40 back-to-back reps, Pat, do you think the Combine's dying? Do you think we're heading toward a point where not necessarily that it will go away anytime soon, but that this, the top prospects are going to continue to opt out the way they did this year?
Yes. I think basically what the Combine is becoming for players that want to raise their stock, for guys who, are going in the, middle, late first round, or guys that, feel like they're fortunate to be invited to the Combine. Not people realize not everybody goes to the Combine, so like some guys like, maybe we'll be talking about it at the end of the year. The guy that kind of burst onto the scene from the Combine and had a good rookie year. Hello, Puka. But yeah, if you're one of these top guys, I don't see why you would do it, because obviously you're going to have your pro day where you're in a familiar setting, throwing to your people, doing whatever, and teams are going to want to work you out anyway. Mm-hmm. So, like, if a team is interested in you at the top of the board, they're going to say, hey, we want you to work out for us. And you say, okay. Because, that's where realistically where you're going. I feel like the Combine can really only hurt these guys. Sometimes, literally. But, but rare, but still. And it's just like, I feel like if you're like Drake May or Jaden Daniels or JJ McCarthy, it's like, you're going to hurt your stock. Like, if anything, you might hurt your stock. You might have, like, what if you go out there and have a bad day in drills? You're going to have all these talking heads, going off about you. So, no, yeah, I think it's just more so like, almost kind of like the Senior Bowl, where it's like, maybe displaying some, lesser known guys, because there is great use to it. I'm sure the teams are very glad it exists. So,
yeah, to me, I've kind of been a Combine hater a little bit over the years, because like, obviously I understand the benefits of like all these players and all these GMs and coaches, being in the same place if they want to be. Not every coach goes, but being in the place where they can talk to these guys and especially like get the measurements and find out really what these guys are, not what their team website may or may not be inflating them to be. Like JJ McCarthy actually measured in as being a little bit bigger than people thought he was. I believe he weighed in like almost 20 pounds heavier than
fatty,
thought, which maybe he was just pulling a Bryce Young, because we remember last year Bryce Young weighed in way heavier than he fucking is. He's a small guy. But like in general, to me, the Combine was like, you have all these like uber specific drills that really are only testing your aptitude to run that drill. And I'm like, why? It just brought me back to like John Ross, who ran an incredible 40 and was just a terrible football player.
Darius Hayward Bay.
Yeah, but the 40 raised his stock so much, and I'm like, at what point are teams going to be like, okay, these are not really applicable to the NFL. Why are we letting the Combine, kind of dictate our thoughts on these guys? But I also see it from the perspective that you are looking for guys who are high character players as well who are going to be mature in the NFL.
Interviews are important too, yeah.
The interviews are important, but also the training for the combine. Like, yeah, these drills may not be a reflection of like what your talent or skill level is going to be in the NFL. Like the way you run the 40 does not dictate, obviously, your ability to run a route, but it does dictate your work ethic for, can you train for this thing that is potentially going to help you, and how seriously do you take it? And like those are the kind of things to, you know, maybe weed out some of the lazier players or the guys that don't have the right mindset to succeed in the NFL. And this is not including the top guys like Marvin Harrison, and I'm not calling them lazy by any means, but just some of these guys, like, I think you could look at it that way, as just trying to find guys who, like, you know, they did their preparation, they did their homework, they prepared for the combine, and okay, this is how they're going to prepare for games now. They're going to be diligent and they're going to work really hard. So I get it from that perspective. As long as teams have it from that perspective, I'm okay with it. I just hate that, like, you know, people might see Xavier Worthy run a super fast 40 and immediately they're like, oh, I want to draft this guy. Like, I hope that's
Xavier
not what
Worthy
it is.
goes 8th overall the way John Ross did, then I think, you know,
Yeah.
it'll need to be...
It's like again, like Xavier Worthy, it is notable that he, I guess, put in the work to like have the right fundamentals for the 40 and be able to run it super fast. My camera died again. I'm letting that one go this time. So it's great that he, you know, put in that work, but overall, like, I just don't want it to be reflective of like what his ceiling is talent-wise. Work ethic-wise, sure, but it's just, I feel like the combine is a little more nuanced than what some people look at it as.
Yeah, have your interviews too, like, if that's what you want to make it more so about, like almost like the winter meetings in baseball amongst the GMs. If you want to make it something like that, then sure, go for it. But yeah, I've never been one, like, I could not tell you the last time I've like watched the combine.
Yeah.
Or even cared to, or even cared a whole lot about looking about stuff that happens. I think if you're gonna more so see what these guys are like in game film.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I'm just not gonna bother with the camera.
Welcome to the Pat Show.
This is in fact the Pat Show. All right, we will finish out with our viewer
excuse
questions.
me. This is the Pat Show. So we're gonna finish out with some viewer questions. First up, this is from Spectrum of Souls. This is the Pat Show.
Hey, you want this to be the Pat Show? You don't even have sound effect privileges. So
do the sound effect first. Do the sound effect.
Oh yeah, now you
cue
need
the sound.
me. Now you need me.
Cue.
We just got a letter. We just got a letter. We just got a letter. Wonder who it's from.
Okay, welcome back to the Pat Show, and we're going to wrap up as we always do with our viewer questions. This one is from Spectrum of Souls. I'm assuming this was Instagram. We got this from here.
Yep.
In a similar light to the question I posed about running a 40, could you and Pat, in your athletic primes, stop Derrick Henry one-on-one in the open field for $100,000? No.
I'm back.
Oh, he's back. Pat Show.
Pat Show's over. Yeah. So the answer to this, Pat turned his camera off. The answer to this is a resounding no. I respect you putting in the question or adding to the question the $100,000 thing as if that's going to make any fucking difference to whether this is possible or not. Like, I'm going to be more motivated. What? No, we can't shoot him.
I was going to ask if we could shoot him. I was going to ask if I could have a gun.
No, you can't have a gun. And also, let me remind everyone, my athletic prime, depending how you look at it, is either like a year ago when I was a little more muscular and still only about 165 pounds, or it's when I was in college and at my real like leanest where I was at 152 pounds. Guess what? I'm not taking Derrick Henry now anywhere.
Or when you were fat but you were balling out in town ball though.
Yeah, that's true. I did have
That's the thing. What's athletic prime? Just like being in the best shape of your life. See, here's the thing is, for me, despite always growing up on the fat side, I was never like strong. Like I never played football. Like I was never tough. I was never aggressive. Like even in playing baseball, like I would come up to the plate, everyone would be like, back up. No, I was a contact hitter, man. I was slapping singles like crazy. I've never been a strong person. So hell no.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'd probably disintegrate. He'd put me on he'd stiff arm me and it would kill me.
Yeah, you could
It would literally kill me.
You could give me a billion chances, and Derrick Henry is putting my ass in the fucking grave every single time. So, no, absolutely not. Thank you for the question, though. And then our last question, would you rather New England signs Jacoby or Flacco as their vet QB? This question from Tactical Mech, our resident Patriots fan, and someone I know very well. It's a good question. I think it depends on what direction the Patriots go with the rest of the roster, because if we're at a point where, we have some good receiving weapons this year, if we trade up and get a guy like Brian Thomas, I'm okay going to get Flacco because that man is just going to chuck the ball down the field, and I think it would at least be fun to watch. Either way, these guys are placeholders and I think very good potential mentors for whatever rookie quarterback we bring in. It's just a matter of what kind of play style do I want to watch for the first, This will not be a situation, I don't think, where the vet starts the full year and then Drake May or Jaden Daniels or whoever we get starts next year. It's going to be a guy who starts for probably 4 games, 5 games, and then we get the rookie in there.
Oh, see, I kind of view this question more so as hey, what if the Patriots take Marvin Harrison at 3 and are getting their starting quarterback? That's the way I saw it. I mean, I think if they get Jaden Daniels or Drake May, I think they're starting. I think they're starting to start the year. But I think you'd rather have Jacoby Brissett just because, I feel like Joe Flacco last year was just so much of a Linsanity run. We saw him be out of the league. We saw him, be a backup, and he's just old. How this guy's got to be almost 40.
Flacco's 39, I'm pretty sure. He's almost
and Jacoby
40,
Brissett, we've seen at the very least, he is passable. We saw it in Indianapolis. We saw it in Cleveland. I bet you Cleveland wish they had Jacoby Brissett still this year.
I'm sure.
And honestly, there were a lot of times in Washington where they probably should have went with Jacoby Brissett over Sam Howell. So I honestly think whether it's going to be someone that you're going to start or a backup, I think Jacoby Brissett is a perfect fit, and he's an old friend.
Yeah, he is. I approached this question based on the report of what the Patriots want to do at quarterback, which is draft a guy and have a veteran and let the guys sit.
That's what they always say.
It is what they.
Anthony
but the Patriots are uniquely equipped to do it, though. I think.
True.
I mean, you've got guys who are outside of Caleb, even Caleb are potentially raw. And if you have the Patriots are such a likely non-competitive team this upcoming year that you might as well sit the guy for a few games if you feel like that's what's best. So yeah, just from a vet perspective with that, I think both guys would work. Jacoby Brissett, it's funny, I want to say he knows the system. I mean, does he? We're about to have a completely new system than when Jacoby was here last time.
Did he play with Gerard May? No, I don't think he did, but
no, I don't think Gerard was done by 2016 or something like that. But yeah, I'd be happy with either one. Which one would I rather? Truthfully, what I want is for the Patriots to somehow find themselves some skill players. If it is a Calvin Ridley along with a guy that we draft, then maybe Flacco will be a little bit more fun. But truthfully, either way, I'm just looking forward to when we get to the point that the rookie quarterback starts. And I hope they stick by their alleged plan to draft a quarterback at 3, because I still think that's the right move, even though I love Marvin Harrison as a player.
Yeah, Brissett came in the year after Gerard Mayo retired, but I think he went straight to the coach.
Close.
I think he went straight to the coaching staff, though. So he probably is at least familiar in some extent.
Okay.
But yeah, it makes sense. I'm not a huge fan of the whole sitting out thing in general, unless you're going to sit him out for the whole year. Or plan to sit him out the whole year. Like with Will Levis, for example. They were sitting Will Levis, and then Tannehill got hurt, and then they had no choice. That's fine, but I loved when the Colts just went with Anthony Richardson, and when the Panthers finally just stopped pretending Andy Dalton was a thing, and just said, this is Bryce Young's team. You're taking a guy 3rd overall, you should be able to start right away. But I understand, and like you said too, it's not like they're going to be trying to win a Super Bowl and win a ton of games this year, so you're not going to necessarily, need your quote-unquote best or most potential out of your quarterback.
Yeah, that's the thing to me. And both these quarterbacks are going to be guys that if we bring one of them in, they're going to know that they are going to be benched at some point and be okay with that more than likely. It's just it's a matter of the situation, and I think they understand what situation they are in. And as far as whether I want the guy to start week 1, the rookie, whoever that may be, I don't really care. Like, as long as I see him before, week 8, hopefully. I understand where the Patriots are at this point. I'm just excited we are making the right steps now toward rebuilding, because this past year was just by the time like week 5 transpired, we knew that the season was lost, and we just kind of had to sit there and take it. So I can deal with going 4-13 again if it's in the interest of figuring out if we have a quarterback and kind of building up some guys on the roster. So we'll see what happens. Don't really care which of them we get. Making me pick, gun to my head right now, I'll take Brissett just because he's not 40, but Flacco could still be fun. All right, guys, that will do it for this episode of Off the Bench, where my camera died twice, but thankfully I'm here to say goodbye.
The Pat Show!
The Pat Show has been canceled after 2 minutes because of vulgarity and
being
sexual
content. Naked for a portion of it.
And Pat is now having a stroke. All right, for Pat Gustafson, because he can't speak anymore, I'm Brandon Carney, and we'll see you guys next week.
Take me out the